did on a daily basis. But this gets a little tricky. It depended on what kind of class you were. If you were first class, those women were very delicate. And they really didn't do much. Maybe some embroidery, beadwork, running of the household. But they were very, like I said, they're very delicate. So they were asked to keep calm and didn't overexert themselves. The middle class, however, would oftentimes be found working alongside maybe their husband in the store, or they were still running the household as well. Now, what I mean by when I say running the household, if you were middle class or upper class, that meant you took care of the servants, you took care of the grocery shopping and the daily monies, you took care of all the other shopping, whether it was for fabric for dresses or going to buy your own dress, because at this time you could go to the store and buy a dress and get it fitted for yourself. The lower classes, however, they all worked, whether it was a mucker, which meant that you cleaned up the streets, or maybe a feather dyer. Feather dyers were just like it said. Take a feather and you dip it and it gets dyed. What else was there? Seamstresses, ring presses, which meant that you would press a piece of metal to make it into a ring, like a jewelry ring. What else was there? There's a whole bunch of other different things. A watch crystal grinder, that was a woman's job too. Teachers, we all like teachers these days. Paper cutter, tanner. Do you know what a tanner does? Tanners are people that work with leather, and they make it soft and smooth and dye it also for it to be used. That being said, it was quite often that women were found during the Civil War working. Very few of the women actually went with their husbands, and those women were called camp followers. But most of them stayed home and took care of the family while the men were off to war. During the day, while the woman was at work and the man was off to war, she would be at work also. Have you ever heard the expression, "It takes a village to raise a child"? Maybe, maybe not. But what that meant was the people that lived in the community would all help raise each other's children while one woman was working. So while the mother of 2 or 3 children went off to work, another woman or family would be taking care of the child. Now, women on average made about $1 a week. It's not a lot, especially in today's standards. But that $1 a week went to rent. So if you were in the city, you paid about 50 cents a week per rent. Well, if you make $1 a week minus 50 cents a week, you still have 50 cents left over. Per week, you have to have coal. So coal per person per week was 42 cents. Well, I did mention that there's kids, correct? So if coal is 42 cents per person per week, and you have 50 cents for rent, that leaves you 8 cents left over. Well, the kids there's not enough coal to heat the house. I haven't mentioned food. And what if the kids need repairs for their outfits or clothes? Well, it was a struggle. It was a big struggle. Middle class, lower class, upper class, all of them were struggling at this time to make ends meet. Food at this time was getting sparse also. So rations inside the house were used. Lots of bread was made, and it often got stale. But the women made do. That's why you see women becoming tanners and women becoming, well, they even helped build the guns that the men used in the war. So that the men could keep fighting. Someone had to do it. You also see a lot of the women having multiple jobs. And again, that's so that they could eat and feed their children. I'm going to take a step back and talk to you about the camp follower. Like I said, every once in a while you have a family that left with their husband or their father to go with them while they fought in battle. Now those women would be able to use the money that the men got for the military, and they were able to feed their entire family, because men didn't always send money home to the families. That being said, women would sleep in the tents with their children and follow along and help camp. They would help them cook, they would help do washing and sewing and mending while the men were fighting in the battles. Women weren't really considered to be the smartest of people. We were almost considered simple. There's one book that said that women were small-brained compared to men, which is a surprise because you have women doing all the math and the money for the households, whether you're middle class or upper class. You have women doing all the cooking and child rearing, so that's pretty good. I would say that we're not small-minded at all, but every one of us knows what we need to do and how to do it. And we can even do most of the men's work too. That being said, there were a couple women that went along with their husbands and wore men's clothes so they could fight with their husbands in battle. That's just silly, but it happened. Well, that concludes what I have to say about women. Do you have any questions, Presley?
How much would the women really get to spend on themselves during the war?
That's a really good question. We women these days love to be able to spend money on ourselves, whether it's a new pair of shoes or a new outfit, a new purse. During the war, women really didn't get to spend any money. They were lucky if they had enough money to mend their clothes. That being said, that is your average woman, middle class to lower class. Upper class still had money to make dresses, and there were balls, and they were trying to do the best they can to make do and live life as normal as they could. Is that all? Well, thank you. I hope you enjoyed this afternoon. I sure enjoyed your company. Come back and visit us here at Zoar anytime.